Hi, Gregory Adamson with Artful YoU. About a week ago, I teased that I was going to start a new series called First Strokes, and still debating that name. But basically, what the series is going to be is every week or so, I'm going to post a short video just giving you a useful tip, some information, showing you something that will be helpful to you, especially if you're a newer painter, because I love teaching new painters, and I know that I have lots of information that can be helpful to you in the early stages of starting to paint. And so I'm just going to put these little short videos out every week, not overwhelm you, but just give you little bits of information that will be helpful to you as you get started painting. And even if you've been painting a while, some of these might be helpful or refreshers for you. But we're going to start real simple, basic things here, and they'll build each week. We'll get into things that are a little bit more significant. But some of these little simple things just make life so much easier for you when you're a newer painter, even if you're an experienced painter. So I want to give you several of these over the next few weeks, and then we'll just build from there. But first of all, let's just talk about what you're going to paint on if you're new to painting, because a lot of people go out and start buying canvases. Like, okay, I've got to paint on canvases. And I'm talking about people who are painting with acrylic, because that's, or even it would even apply to oils, but primarily let's talk acrylics for now, because acrylics is just a great forgiving medium for people that are starting out painting. It just gives you a lot of possibilities, and you're not dealing with the chemicals and the things you have with oils, and you're not dealing with the emergency that you have if you're painting with watercolor sometimes. So I'm going to focus these, at least for the first few weeks here, about painters that are starting out with acrylic paints. But the concepts are, some of them will be pretty universal. So, but this first one is about what we're going to paint on. And one thing that happens if you're new to painting, and if you are, you should paint a lot, like a lot, all the time, because that's how you just get your skills built up. You get used to handling the medium, you get used to working with the materials, and you just start to get some confidence by working repetitively with the medium. So, but here's what I recommend if you're starting. I recommend paint on paper, not canvas. And I'll tell you why. Not that there's anything wrong with painting on canvas, and if you want to, it's fine, because you can get the experience of the different tactile surface of working with a stretched canvas versus paper. But the thing about paper, when you're trying to start and get started and doing a lot of practice and a lot of paintings, and maybe you're not at a point yet where you're thinking, okay, these are paintings I want to keep or save or give to someone. You're just trying to get used to using the medium. If that's the case, paper is a great surface to work on, because you could produce a lot of work and not have them stacking up around you, which canvases tend to do. And pretty soon you're stacking canvases, you're working yourself right out of a room or out of your house, because you have so many of them. And so what you can do with paper is you can create a lot of work and have a fairly still small, manageable stack of surfaces. So let me just show you real quick here. I have a pad that I bought. This is, and I'm not promoting any particular brands here, but this is just called a Fabriano Fat Pad. It's just watercolor paper, and watercolor paper is good for acrylic. If you're going to use watercolor paper, get the weight is important, the weight of the paper, and it's usually measured in grams or pounds if you're in the U.S. And the minimum you want to get, I believe, personal preference, is at least 140-pound paper. It's got a good amount of thickness, as you can see here. It's got some thickness to it. It's not super duper thick or sturdy, but it's sturdy enough for getting started painting. You can also get 300-pound paper, which is really stiff and won't ripple at all when it gets wet. But 140 pounds is going to do you well for starting out painting. I would not go any lighter than that, like a 90-pound or make 100-pound or 120-pound. I just wouldn't mess with those papers, because they're just going to, when they get wet, they're going to bubble up on you and just be challenging to work with when you're working with acrylic paint. So stick with 140-pound paper. This particular pad from Fabriano, it's called a Fat Pad. It came with 60 sheets of paper. It's 9 by 12, which is a good size. Again, if you're starting out, smaller works just get you a lot of practice, and you know, it's just once you start working larger, those are different challenges, and we'll talk about those in subsequent weeks. But for starting out, like a 9x12, 11x14, those are good sizes to learn and practice on. But what I do, if I'm going to use a pad like this, and you know, you can get 60 sheets out of this, plus you can use both sides of the paper and get 120 paintings out of this pad of paper. And I think this was like 18 bucks. It's not super expensive, but what you should do if you're going to work with watercolor paper and acrylic is you should put gesso on it. Gesso is just a white, if you're new, it's a white primer. It just seals the paper and creates a nice kind of toothy surface to take the acrylic paint. Whereas if you work on the raw paper, you can do that, it's fine. But the raw paper is going to really absorb the moisture, and it's going to be kind of like a blotter at first, so you get some layers of paint on it, and it's just going to be a little more challenging to put paint on, to blend, and that sort of thing. So I always recommend seal it with a good coat of gesso first. Just gesso comes in many colors, but you know, again, when you're starting out, maybe just a white gesso. I just put mine in a bottle here so that I can show you, but it comes in many different forms. There's some that's more solid, some that's more fluid. I'm using one here it's thick, but it's still pretty fluid, and it just allows me to coat the whole surface of the paper with a nice coat that isn't going to be too thick and difficult to work with, and not going to change the texture of my surface too much. But I just put a nice coat on, and that's really all you have to do, and then let it dry. So, and there's so many kinds of gesso, you just find one that you like. This particular one, I like the consistency for sealing paper or canvas, and it's by Nova Color, N-O-V-A color. It's just a white gesso. Sometimes I use a black gesso. Sometimes I like to work on a black surface for high contrast. Something else we'll talk about later. But you know, starting out, white gesso is great. And you know, try to get it all the way to the edge of your paper. And notice how it's curling up a little bit, and it will do that, but it will flatten back out pretty well. And you know, when it's dry, you can turn it over and gesso the other side so that you have both sides ready to work on. And gessoing the other side will help flatten the paper back out. But what I do then, after I've done a number of sheets like this, I just take them out of the pad. I just pull them out of the pad to gesso. And then when I've got gesso on them and have let it dry thoroughly, turn it over, do the other side, let it dry thoroughly. And then I can put them back in the pad. Just keep them handy. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to do this. You don't want to start putting the gesso on and trying to gesso the sheets while they're still in the pad, because what's going to happen, it'll just absolutely happen, is some of that gesso will get over the edge of your paper, and then you're going to glue all the sheets in your tablet together. You don't want to do that, because then you're going to have a difficult time getting one out without tearing it. So take them out, gesso them, let them dry, and then you can put them all back in the pad and have them handy when you're ready to paint. And you know, if you do a couple of these a day, you're off to the races as a painter, and you're going to just learn so much in such a short amount of time doing that. But I hope this is a helpful tip. Let me know what you think, and I'll be back again next week with another one of our First Strokes videos. So thanks for watching, and I'm Greg Adamson. See you soon.